KV.
Mark, what time is it?
It's post-pod time.
It's the post pod. It's the post pod. And we have a
Mimi,
special
you get-
guest, though.
Yeah, and usually it's just us acting like idiots afterwards, but we're going to up-level this because you're here. And this is a
So
first
no
for us.
jingles, Mark?
Wow. Well, you already did a little bit of singing, which is
I
great.
did my jingle.
Yeah.
This is great for me. The reason I'm on this is because of my terrible internet. So, whilst waiting for it, thank you guys for having me. Every cloud has a silver lining.
Yeah, this is great.
100%.
So yeah, and literally, like, we just threw this at you. So yeah, just to explain for you, V and I at the end of every show, or usually right after the show, but we end up recording a little bit of a post pod. And the idea is just kind of debrief, chat about what we just heard, and kind of share some insights that kind of stuck out for us.
Yeah.
And then as we were kind of just waiting for your internet to load the last one, we just threw it out and we were like, yeah, let's hit record.
I'm super interested in what you guys, because obviously we're very close to the research and we've thought about it for a long time. I'm super interested in like an external view. Like what did V and Mark, what did you think? What kind of blew up for you in it?
Do you want to kick off, Mark?
No, you go.
I'll start. Okay.
No, you go.
What? I got it. All right. Hold my beer. Okay. What I absolutely love about it is the simplicity, the way that you can evaluate anything in the organization across the three things. So like, what is the promise that we're making? Is it measurable? Is it valuable then to the consumer? Is it deliverable? And then if it, like Roger said, and like anecdotally, it's auditably deliverable. And I think those four things, if you will, if you want to add the anecdote part, you can apply to any part of the business. You can provide it, you can apply it to the production, you can provide it to marketing, you can apply it absolutely anywhere. And what it does, it really crystallizes what we're all here to do. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's becoming, and I think that's why this research is really taking off, is because it becomes a very simplistic way to look and review your business or audit your business from top down. You can create stakeholder alignment very easily. You can make sure you're bringing your teams along for the ride very easily, because you can you can kind of create that ecosystem, that ethos in the organization that permeates that promise to the customer. And from a marketing lens, if I just take a marketing lens to it, is what we were talking about, in the episode, is it provides just the amount of constraints that you need to really be effective. And I think all too often as marketers, that's where sometimes we fall short. We try to paint this grand canvas when we don't need to. And we just have to be simplistic in our message, in the way that we communicate to our consumer, and in hopes of coming back to the root promise that we've all agreed on that we're making. So I think that's what I really, really appreciate about this research. And I think I love this evolution to the B2B space. Just because, again, I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done. Not to say like B2C is immune to this, but yeah, I think the opportunity there for sure. Mark, how about you?
Yeah, I've you and I have chatted about this a little bit, V, in the past, but for me, Mimi, the thing that it's so compelling in its simplicity, and the thing that I find really interesting about it, B2B or B2C, is that you have this idea, marketing is often / advertising is often thought of as like this thing where you put a coin in and you need to have X number of dollars out. And if it doesn't work, if you can't prove it, then you guys would cut budget, then we're going to cut the team. You're not doing it right. There's like this ownership on ROI that is solely placed on the marketing team because they're spending money. But the truth is that a lot of other companies or other functional departments in the company are spending money too. But what I like about the promise to the customer is that it creates this idea of a team sport. Like winning is a team sport. And in order for us to deliver on a promise to the customer, not only is it not just like we're showing a discount, get people in market to buy now, it simplifies, I think, what a brand is, simplifies how to build a brand, and then also puts ownership on the delivery of the brand experience on everybody to align around this promise to the customer in a very simple, almost Trojan horse kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, that's the big thing.
It's exciting to hear. It's exciting. I love the post-party feel vibe, guys.
Yeah.
Can we use this to say to say mean stuff about all the other people on the podcast? No, I'm just kidding.
We could.
Like
We
Jann and
absolutely
Roger.
we love Roger on this podcast. And Jann.
The I think the thing that you said, Mark, it really resonates with me. I feel that it's very unfair in marketing that an intangible outcome you're basically punished for because you can't present it as an ROI multiplier.
Yes.
So, I mean, the piece of research that Jann and I recently did actually shows that brand is the decisive factor in every sales conversation that people are having in this quarter. But we're a long way. I don't, CMOs know that brand works, but all of them, you just get 100, they'll say, oh, it's really difficult to measure. And I think that it's difficult to measure, but businesses make money in two ways. One is they have a product that makes a promise to the customer, and customers understand that promise and buy that product. Whether they do it explicitly or implicitly is irrelevant. That's actually what happens. And they they have a promise to their employees that their employees understand and engage with and consent to and are part of that organization. And I've always thought that the two functions that lead the two value creating levers of the business are basically the CMO and the CHRO, who are largely viewed as not as important as, for instance, the CFO or the CIO. If you had to evaluate, like if the CEO had a, like the building's on fire and there's a helicopter, and the CEO has only got room for 5 people in the helicopter, you can say, oh, well, I better take the head of product, I've got to take him, got to take the CTO, got to get him and the guys, got to get the CFO, obviously, because that's important. And then by the time it comes to Mimi, it's like, oh, Mimi, we loved your brand campaign so much. You guys were so good. It was everybody loved us. I just wish we had room because we like you so much. But you know what? Unfortunately, F off. So I think we express we express value. The real value that we really create is in the relationships that a business has with its customers, with its employees. If you want to talk me out of that, I'm willing to spend the next 7 hours disagreeing with you. But the trouble is we just don't articulate that value in a measurable way. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have value. That doesn't mean that it's not the absolute truth. Every truth is less true than that. Every truth. If you want to tell me that your business isn't the promise that you make to your customers and the promise that you make to your employees, it's some other thing. Great, good luck. But the promise is a constraint.
Yeah.
And we need that constraint.
Yeah.
Find beauty in constraints.
Yeah. The other thing that, as we were going through that conversation, there's one idea that came into my mind a few times, and V, you might remember, we had Colin Powell's on, Professor Colin Powell's, and he talked about, you've probably seen this image, it's like a meme, I call it, but it's this drunk guy looking under a street lamp for his keys.
Yeah, I love this.
And so he gave the analogy of like, it's like that when people are saying, well, why are you doing the things you're doing? He's like, well, in this case, the drunk guy looking under the streetlight for his keys. He's like, well, he's like, I lost my keys. And the police officer's like, well, why are you looking here? He's like, well, because this is where the light shines. And so, I think a lot of times we
That's exactly
have
right.
this data
exactly
of where the light is shining. And we're not really looking at the things and we're only looking at those things where there are data points.
Yep.
And when we're talking about the future, and what I liked about the promise to the customer as well, is very future oriented. You can kind of measure the back end of it in terms of like, are we delivering on this? But it forces you to think about what you want to become in a way and how you're going to deliver on that, which is an important part of like growth.
Yeah. I would argue, Mark, it probably, because you're trying to measure the effectiveness, say, of the promise, it likely forces you to measure your outputs a lot differently. Yes, you have your key performance, which is going to be revenue, RGUs, whatever case may be for any company. But when you're asking, you're putting the research out there, the surveys, it's like, it becomes very succinct. It's like, is a perception that you've been able to deliver against this promise, repeatably, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it actually helps simplify what the desired outcome actually is, more so than when we think about performance marketers. I know we get a bad rap, and Mimi, you may or may not know this, but I spent most of my career on the performance marketing side. And I've had the luxury, if you will, kind of being on that end of the data where internally it actually became that source of truth. Even though as I, continue to mature and immerse myself in more and more literature, I know how myopic that can be. But the thing here is the promise to the customer, I think, ushers in a new way of not only thinking and aligning your business. The measurement follows suit as well. How are you going to measure your effectiveness in being out there? And it removes that spotlight, if you will, from those spreadsheet ninjas that live in every organization that are just looking line item by line item and say, my site traffic was this conversion happened from here was just
though.
This alone.
It's so seductive to believe that there's a logical, rational, and linear relationship between inputs and outputs. And the trouble is that we know in brand, we know in likelihood of being bought, that this is an environment that's ruled by asymmetry. It is not linear, it is asymmetric. Asymmetric, I would say, on a squared or a cubic level. I think if you're the number one in a category, everything is as hard as it is. If you're the number two in a category, to be successful, it's actually 4 times as hard. If you're the number 3 in a category,
right,
it's actually 9 times as hard. The Ehrenberg Bass piece of work that they did about the smaller brands, it's harder to be smaller. It's not harder in a linear way. It's harder in a square. It's double as hard, or hard to the squared level.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest brands have 2/3 of a category. Yeah. That's not linear. If you want to fight overwhelmingly difficult odds, then being known on day one is the only way that you're actually going to maximize your opportunities of winning. I think that there are things that we're not measuring that would give us different data points. And I think the day one list, which actually the team that we did this piece of work with was with Jamie Cleghorn and Andrew Pearce at Bain, who run the global B2B practice there. They did the day one list, and we supplemented it with how likely are you to be bought if only a few people know you? Answer is 4% of the purchases that were made only when a few people knew you. That is a really strong indicator. Are you really going to put all that effort in? No, you're not.
Yeah.
There is a value to performance, and I'm not saying that there isn't, but I would say that it's the top of the iceberg, and underneath the iceberg, we should probably have underneath the water level, we should have a little look just to see, if there's more stuff there that we need to take account of.
I agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
I know we're kind of running up on time here, but one thought that came to mind as well is the valuable part. And Mimi, you being in research, I feel like you might have something to say about this. V and I always joke about marketing is the first getting cut whenever there's cuts. Maybe that's not true, but it feels like that because we're always the ones getting cut. But then within marketing, there's also subgroups, and research is almost always the first one to get cut within marketing. And so there's this idea of like, okay, sure, create a promise to the customer. Well, what does the customer value? And understanding that part is, I think, kind of a bit of like where the screw turns a little bit. And having a deep understanding of the customer to understand what they value in order to make a promise that matters to them, that they care about, is kind of a interesting thing. And then layer in the B2B side of it, where there's complexity, where there's a whole bunch of buyers that are involved. I think that's a really interesting area to understand more.
If I were to think about being a B2B marketer so I think it's profoundly different, but only in the specifics of the job in B2B is to get a buyer group to agree. right? They've just got to agree. They've got to land on, whether it's individually in silos or collectively around a room, they've got to decide that a vendor is the right one. And I think that's just
Is the
very
right one, yeah.
different from I decide whether a thing is good for me to buy individually. And brand is the blame insurance that people are willing to pay more money for. They're willing to compromise on product features and capabilities for. They're willing to buy, they're willing to spend more and sacrifice quality in order to get to agreement. So I would say B2B marketing is about getting the buyer group to agree. B2C marketing is about getting an individual to make a decision. And so we overwhelmingly lean into trying to get that individual to make a decision. And we think that somehow, although we don't really understand it, in B2B, it must be the sigma of that. It must be the sum of a bunch of individual decisions. But what we actually found is that the first thing people are ready to do is to make a trade-off. They will trade off what matters to them in order to get a bunch of people to agree. And in one presentation that Jann and I did, we actually had a really nice AI picture of a bunch of gorillas, because B2B buying is much more social and hierarchical and political than we're willing to accept that it is. And then somebody came up and said, I think people might be offended by that.
Right.
Are you trying to say that B2B marketers are like gorillas? And I said that actually I think B2B marketers are nowhere near as good at gorillas at making a decision or understanding how decisions are made. And I think that's true. I think there's a dimension where it is the sophistication of getting to agreement is the job of B2B marketers. We have to understand that. We might not love it, but it is the reality. And if we try to solve a problem based around reality, we have a much greater chance of succeeding than any measurable things that we can do that don't drive to activity. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is so much stuff in this. Yeah. Anyway, Mimi, thank you so much for sitting in with us on this.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Thanks for letting me crash your party. I loved it.
The other thing, no problem. You might not know this, but we always joke about how we chase profitability afterwards. So we always try to think of a fun way to say that. I don't know if you got anything, Veep.
Well, I was going to say, we did get a first snow a few weeks ago, but the temperature's kind of gotten, it's a little bit lower right now. So I can't go find profitability outside in the trees that I have. So I'm going to walk upstairs, mix myself a nice little oatmeal to try to basically get my neural engine firing so then I can go chase a profitability at work. So that's what I'm doing today. How about you, Mark?
Yeah.
I don't know where it's going with that.
I don't know. I was in awe there. I was watching you land that plane. It was amazing. A lot of crosswinds.
Headwinds, crosswinds, it's all there.
Yeah. Anyway, it was it was great. That was a good one. Anyway, thanks so much, Mimi, for sitting in with us.
Thanks,
really appreciate it.
Thanks, Ree. Thanks, Mark. Thanks. I hope you'll have us again because we really enjoyed it. And it's nice to have these conversations amongst friends. It really is.
I agree.
Here.
Here.
All right. Take care.
I'll raise a spoon of oatmeal to that.